Good morning, everyone. Oh, actually, Dave, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dave Swift.
Hello there.
There he is. We're from New York, we're from Connecticut, and we're from London. Hey, Ron,
Ron,
good to
how
see
are
you.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
I'd like to introduce you to Dave Swift.
Hello, Dave Smith.
Swift.
Swift, as in very fast.
Hi, Ron. Good to meet you. Good to see you.
Dave.
So,
Go ahead, Dave.
gosh, I've got Godfrey. Let me just say that I'm in the house.
So David and Ron, you've never met before.
That's correct. You just fixed that.
Well, if you buy a record in the UK and if you buy a record in the United States, chances are either Ron Carter or Dave Swift are on that record.
Okay.
So the reason I have all of you here today
We're gathered together.
Yeah, this book.
Okay.
I've got that.
Me too.
Is amazing for a lot of reasons. First reason is we're actually getting a chance to see a tune grow over 5 years. The second thing we're seeing is more than one chorus of that tune, which is equally amazing. And the third thing that's most important is not so much of the book, it's what you do with the concept after. And that to me is one of the more important aspects of it. So I have a bunch of questions. I want to look at this in two different ways. Number one, if I'm a young aspiring bass player and I get the book, what do I do with it? And then the second half is, as an old fogey like myself, I'm looking at it not so much as bass lines, but the harmony. Why is this? And then, well, just a quick, for instance, why is the first bar a C minor 7 and the second bar a C sharp diminished 7th? I know, I think. However, these are the interesting points that go beyond just reading a bass line. And I think that is an important concept. So I have an iPad legal pad, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
And
Is that our fee for this?
well, it's a Notability app.
Here comes it. This
No,
honorary.
Notability's free.
We call it this honorary.
No. I literally just found this because Sunday I wanted to go to Staples to get legal pads, and I said, "Wait a second, I've got the Apple Pencil. Why don't I look?" And so Notability, which is a free app, folks.
Excuse me. I'm living in the legal pad. I own this place right here, so I don't need one of those.
Me too.
Well, just as funny, I think having a legal pad on an iPad is the approximation of redundancy.
Yeah, iLegal.
What is it? The Department of Redundancy Department.
Yeah.
So my first question is, as a young bass player, when I first opened the book, how should I approach using it?
Is that directed to me?
Yes, sir.
As the first owner of a non-legal pad, okay. I think the first thing they have to see is that chords can be altered at any point in the course of the tune. That's the first thing you have to understand. But the second thing is they're getting more than one line, one chorus with which to see how the bass line develops. That's really important. I try to tell my students that you have to remember what you played last year to make the next year have a great line in it. And this example, to go to your second question, this 4 or 5 chorus example over a period of projected time, in this case, 3 or 4 or 5 concerts. I want them to see how the bass line, it doesn't have specifically new material. It is specifically new material based on my first attempt to get it right at the first concert. I want them to see that those three things are important.
Okay. Any questions, guys?
Well, that's a radical approach to an instruction book, because as Ron mentioned in our previous conversations, and Dave, we talked about this, you see a baseline transcription, but how did it get there? What's the ideology?
Absolutely.
And once you understand how the baseline got there, you can now internalize that. I'm not going to play like Ron Carter, but I can think like Ron Carter, and I can take that ideology. And the beautiful thing is you can apply it to any genre. You don't have to be a jazz, but you could be a rock player, a classical blues player. So this is, it's such an important foundation. And again, David, and Ron, we always stress music education. Knowledge is power, and this is a very powerful tool to have.
Okay, let me jump in 1 minute if I can. One of the other things I want the bass players to see is how his note choices and rhythm choices affect everybody in the band. Mm-hmm. That's secondary of a more importance. His F sharp on a G chord, everyone's going to say, "Hey man, what is that doing?" Your job is to show them what it does to the next chorus, but you got to remember that. I tell my students that a non-chord tone, it only works if it fucks up the harmony. Doesn't do that, it's not worth it. That's the whole point of those chords that are not C7 all the time. To make the sound of the chord have a different sound, that you're in control of the whole band following your direction, good or bad, to wherever you want to take them.
Well, I think it's a wonderful thing as well that you've got the links on each page.
Yes.
That you can go to, because the thing is, to be honest, Ron, when I started out, I mean, look, I've still got these.
I got one somewhere back here in my legal closet. Yeah.
And even your the ones from this book, do you remember?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Wow.
So, but in those days, it was so hard to find recordings of those things, and all you had was what was on the page. And as you said, there's so much missing from that, just the transcription alone. It's so important to have access to recordings, and it was always difficult back then. But so now to have this immediate thing where you can listen to it and look at the same time, it's such a brilliant idea. It's so fantastic.
One of the things I've learned from doing this process is how rapidly the band trusted my judgment. Mm-hmm. Because this is in real time. There's no discussion about, hey man, what did that note mean? We're already into the second bar, or the second concert, or the microphone went out somewhere and they only heard one of something else. They're strictly going on my information to them. And if they look carefully, they can see how the drummer, in this case, Tony Williams, picks up my rhythm from a concert, and they see it again because I play that thing 2 concerts later. I want them to understand I tell those guys and gals, 3 of them, that Miles Davis was the band leader, but I was leading the band. And this Chartography shows me exactly what that means for me. Yeah, man, I'm questioning the band leader. He called it all that stuff. But after the downbeat, I led the band.
That's great. And it brings up the next thing. For this, I'm just looking for information on page 5, which are basically the changes, and page 6, the 1963 recording. So when I'm listening to the recording, and 2 things come up. One, they're waiting for you to make that note. I hear Herbie lays out a little bit and then comes in, and there's a lot of give and take with that. So I hope this question comes out right. Okay, so you guys obviously have played Autumn Leaves before this recording. So the question is, number 3 here, the new changes were applied the first time, sometime. How did everyone adapt at that moment?
You kind of asked me to speak for those guys, and I'll take my chances because I think I know them pretty well. That I'm pretty not far off the mark. They felt something different was taking place. We'd been together for, at this case, a year, and I was starting to understand two things: the power of the bass, and how I could control the harmonic view of the band. I was starting to understand that sometime after we did that first date in California with the Seven Steps, and later on in New York.
Right, right.
By this year, they understood that something's going on, and the bass player is no longer behind the palm tree. He stepped out in front of the band with this kind of concept that no one knew how to define that was the issue, but they know that they could count on me for two things: some new note choices, and always to tell them where I thought one was. And with that trust in me, I was a little more comfortable to try to see if what I heard worked somewhere outside in the walls of these two ears. And they trusted that I would, if I didn't get it right, I wouldn't go into a downspace. I got one more chorus, man. I know that every night, the first song we play is going to be Autumn Leaves. For 5.5 years, man. Sometimes you wouldn't hear Herbie playing because he hadn't gotten to the piano yet. Or the microphone wasn't working yet. There's no sound check. You know those deals, man. You go in there and you put your suitcase in the corner, hope nobody steals it while you're playing the third chorus of So What. All that stuff is going right. It's going right here. So they were used to me trying to having a concept that I was working on with their help. And I can appreciate their reluctance to play a big downbeat because my note might not have matched that, which was a concern of theirs.
Right.
To answer your question, why didn't Herbie play? He didn't listen to how many times Miles laid out for those 4 courses.
Right. Well, it's interesting, Ron, from our last conversation, you were, let's say, so. Then you had your G minor, but then that B natural.
Yes.
Which is kind of interesting because that there's a resolution there too, right?
Yes.
But so, and that's where I wanted to go. So the original changes, which I just played, you then substituted in the original, so you had the B minor to the E and then the B flat. Can you explain to our listeners what you had in mind with that?
I'm playing 2-5-1 sequence. I'm not going just D to A, D to A, G to C. I'm going D, A, G. That's my cycle.
Right.
And then 2-5-1 in the next key. So I'm playing like this. They're only hearing these 2 notes and these 2 notes.
Right.
I'm playing this.
Yeah.
So the next chord had to be that chord based on the 2-5 before it.
Exactly. And that's why when you get to chorus 2, you've got your C minor. And then you go to the C sharp diminished. Now, is that C sharp diminished really you're basing that on the G, correct?
Well, if you look at the chorus 2, I'm looking at chorus 2, right? The chorus 1. The second chord is the F chord, right?
Right.
Okay, now I'm taking and looking at chorus 2. It's the same chord, only with F in the bass, only with A in the bass, correct?
Right.
Okay, now I'm looking at the third chorus. I'm seeing that chord as an F sharp chord. And I'm still hearing A in the bass despite not playing. I'm starting at 2-5-1, C, F, C, F, C, B. So that C sharp seemed like a nice leading tone to imply some kind of dominant 7 chord coming up, because that's always a leading tone into a 1 of some kind.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And see, that's the other important point of this book. It's not just playing a bass line. There's a heavy theoretical concept.
Absolutely.
Which is way more important for all students, because they're going to get on the piano and go, oh, why is it an E minor 7 flat 5 11 versus the A minor 7 flat 5. Well, that 11, that's an A.
That's correct. That's correct.
And
Yes.
bam, bam, boom. You're. Thank you. A clap from you is worth millions to me.
You know, when my students get it right, I give them this. Not used too often, but
but that's it in the nutshell. You come away from this not only knowing a myriad ways of playing Autumn Leaves, you come away with this with myriad ways of playing anything.
That's
It's
correct.
Not so much go back to your old transcriptions. It's go forward with any of the transcriptions you had. You know, Dave, you are a well-educated musician, and you and I have spoken about this, the amount of preparation. It goes back to, I'm not just picking apples, remember? I've got a plan. So
absolutely right.
to open any book, whether it's a novel, nonfiction, fiction, whatever, music books, you must have a plan to start. And this, you know, no wonder it's so damn big. There's so much. But it's what's to me, and I'm being Department of Redundancy. It's not even what's on this page. It's what's on all these other pages that I haven't written, that the students haven't written, that other people practicing it. I'm getting off my soapbox.
I'm just scared that when I order a copy, the postman's going to ruin it trying to get it through my letterbox. I don't think my letterbox is big enough.
Well, you know, one of the things that does concern me is that no one will explain to the bass player what he's really listening at. He's listening at one person control the thoughts and the processes of two equally talented guys for a whole tune that's played for 5 years. And I want them to listen to how Tony Williams on page 6, how he picks up on my rhythm that I'm playing and does something else with it because he knows it's coming again somewhere else. I want them to see the effect that they have, not just by picking certain notes, but what rhythm affects those notes given where the chords are falling.
And then, of course, go to page 13. You go, wait a second. He did it the following year. He did it the following year. And you said something at the beginning about remembering what was done. And I think in a lot of cases, a lot of musicians, they play their shows, they pack up, they go.
Yeah.
This remembering process, and Dave, with you playing with 500,000 people over a year, and you still prepare for them, and when you're done, you're thinking about exactly what you did and how for the next person you can do it better.
Sure. Well, that's the way I always start with transcriptions of what I'm having to play, but then I do transcriptions of what I've played as well, so I can analyze it back and see. So it's that's very important for me, that study.
And that's different for me in that I'm doing all this in my head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't have a transcription of my last concert. I'm trying to make this, make the cobwebs find somewhere else to be and try to translate what I heard for this last concert for the next concert, because I know it's coming up. Sure. Can I make this 3 against 4 be set up correctly that the guys know it's coming? And what can you do with it? And look at page 10. That's that 3 against 4 all over the place. But it started 3 versions before this. And they finally realized, I got you, MF.
It's wonderful listening to the recordings, and as soon as you start to do something, the quick reaction to the within a second or two, they're following
right on it.
Wonderful.
That's what's amazing about playing with the same band for a while. One of the things that we hope we group here hope that guys get to a band again and spend some time rather than spending a career. And I'm okay with that freelancing. I'm still kind of in that community. But we were together 5 years or more, and we had a chance to understand everyone's weaknesses as well as everyone's strengths. And we understood that one bad measure doesn't make the gig; it just makes one bad measure. But don't do that again.
It's interesting because I'm reading a book, Stratus Funk, about George Russell.
Oh yeah.
And they talk about the early albums, and some of that early stuff is really quite incredible, the writing and such. But he was telling a story about how weekends, all the guys that played on the record would get together just to play. So they were well rehearsed by the time they went in to do that session.
Yeah.
And it's just the power of playing with the same people is just so important.
Yeah.
Just so important.
I played that to Gil Evans. We had a record of that on Out of the Cool at Stratus Funk.
Mm-hmm.
Gil had a band. At the time, groups worked in New York like 8 weeks in a row at the same place, man. And it was heaven. When no one knew it then. It's just like another gig, Yeah. But we worked for 8 weeks with an octet, with Johnny Coles and Keg Johnson on trombone and Charlie Persip or Elvin Jones. So we played that library of Gil's and the George's Stratus Funk tune. So we understood what the choices were because we had kind of discovered most of them inadvertently, accidentally, but we knew that when we get into the studio, we had these choices that we already eliminated. And that's why the record sounds so great, because this band, it was not a band of guys, it was a band of band members.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Stratus Funk came out with Tony Studd playing the bass line down there, and I was playing unison. It's a great sound. We worked on that sound at the gig for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
One of the things I regret about the latest Miles Quintet records we did, we never got a chance to develop that library live. We never played Riot too many times live. We didn't play Circle but one time live. And I had a chance, man, this is a chance to find out, man, what the bass can really do, man. Can I really play this MF every night and have it happen? Let's go, man. I said, Miles, how about this? It's too hard. Hey, okay, you're still the boss. But I'm still leading the band.
That's great. That's great. Anything else, guys? I think we got a lot.
It's one of the things that's Chartography, I think, reinforces is the ability we have to compose on the bandstand, whether it's Autumn Leaves, whether it's Yesterday. It makes every gig exciting. It makes every gig unique. You want to give something special to your audience.
Absolutely.
And you're giving them a gift of a new composition within an old composition. And, we all know playing gigs night after night, you can go on automatic pilot, and you don't ever want to go on automatic.
Mm-hmm. When I'm feeling really harmonically aggressive, and I pity the band who works this first gig me when I go to work.
Well, what was it? Last time we spoke, we were talking about that E flat, right?
Yes. I'm going to say, guys, school is in.
That's good.
Get your pencils ready, because here comes some new chords. I've been working on this stuff in my head for 15 months. Let's see if this sucker works for live, So we're going to have a great time, I tell them, whoever cries first gets the biggest salary for the night.
I was listening to the Mars in Berlin, the '64 version, and I obviously listened just to the transcription, but I listened to the whole recording, of course. And there's some great stuff in there. At one point, because Tony's doing like a shuffle thing, and then you're both doing it. You're playing like do.
Yeah.
And then I think it's like Wayne solo, and you start to pedal like an E flat.
Yes, it's the same thing.
And he just goes on for it, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is glorious. This is so authentic. And just when you think it's going to stop, and it goes a little bit longer, and I just thought, man.
We needed that, see.
I love that. Absolutely.
If you look at page, someone asked this question before, on page 10, someone asked me, how do I play triplet? How do I hear 3 against 4, for example? And when I do master classes, which I haven't done in a very long time, I have a student I try to pick the guy in the audience who's like the class clown. You know those guys who come to those things? They're looking for some mischief, And there's one right there. I try to have him be the guy who I need to help some demonstration. So this is easy. I said, look, all you got to do, just do this. Okay, I have my metronome here for you. So I have him just do this. Right now, my metronome is set to 100. Now, this is his 4. Now do this.
Yeah.
Well, this. So see, tell him, I'm still hearing this.
Mhm.
And I'm hearing this plus the changes that are involved. So I'm trying to figure out where the chords are falling in this beat as I'm doing this. Or that. And this guy, he's finally sits down and he's quiet for the rest of the concert, rest of the talk. He's gotten embarrassed in front of his friends because he couldn't hold this while I'm doing this. So,
I always tell my students, never underestimate the influence and responsibility that you have.
Absolutely.
As a bassist,
Yes.
Because the amount of times I've done gigs where either the pianist or somebody else or the guitarist has been unfamiliar with the chords, or even if they're familiar with them and they just want to take a break. You as a bassist, you can't do that. They can take their hands off the piano.
Yes, right. We always have to be there.
We can't stop. But same with the drums to some extent. And I always sort of say, never underestimate that kind of power and responsibility. And yeah.
Every note I play has these things in it.
Yeah.
Every note determines this.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
That's a lot of responsibility, and also the amount. I don't know. Hopefully, this hasn't happened to you very often, Ron. But for me, it has. I've done gigs where, and maybe because it's been a monitoring problem, but ever worked when a piano player and a drummer have got on the wrong beat of the bar, and they're not hearing it. They're not hearing it for whatever reason, and I always have to be the one that kind of goes. Someone has to make that decision.
Yes.
And because if they're going to keep doing that and they can't hear, then someone has got to step in. And so again, responsibility. That.
Yeah. One of my student commentaries is that I don't play roots all the time. It's kind of get used to that idea.
Yeah.
And then I tell them sometimes the band leader just wants roots.
Yeah.
So I give him 2 or 3 of them. And if you want more than 4, there's a grocery store that has a grocery store down there. An outdoor market, man. They got none but roots down there, man. All roots. But for when you say that someone's got the wrong beat, they get some roots from me. 1 MF.
Yeah.
Top. Bridge.
That's right.
Last 8. Yeah. I save roots just for those places. I'm not going to waste them for that. That's my stockbroker. My stockbroker.
Anyway,
I'm on the Zoom. I'll call you right back.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that this book also helps with is making certain that a bass player sits down with a keyboard and that's something that I with a lot of the transcription books is a big problem. You're reading the bass line, but if you don't hear the chords behind
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
I've been saying that for years. That's the second biggest thing. The first biggest thing is you don't know what happened before this chorus and what happened after.
right.
Did this bass player, whoever he or she is, did they play this great line you just took down? Did they develop it over here? Or how did it get to be so great? What made it work like that? And do you have the skill level to play it night in and night out, that bass line?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what those notes are? Where was he before the line took place? And how did he get out of there after he got through with it? Would he go, God damn, it's done? Or did he catch something? What? And this, I hope that this 10-page transcription tome gives the transcribers and the describees a chance to see what the results are of their note choices and how they were arrived at.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
is that right?
And
And in the
you made a
preposition
great
at?
point.
Yeah.
You made a great point with the E flat. Play the E flat and then play the chords. See how they all operate.
Yes.
With the structure. I mean, you know what? This isn't rocket science. However, it's a practical science.
Yeah.
You need, once again, you've got to have a plan.
Absolutely. And I think what I'm trying to do now is incorporate one of my books in conjunction with this books that tells you how I construct bass lines on the very basic level. You know, I happen to have one here in my iPad, in my legal iPad house here. It's called Blueprint for a Working Jazz Bassist. And in this book, I show you how I construct lines. First of all, with the dots. So these are all the choices you have per beat, not per. So when I say FA, I don't say just FAC.
Sure.
I say FAC. This is all half position only. I see all these choices. Then I connect them. Then I connect these notes. So you come up with this, my choice. After all those choices you just saw, I picked this choice.
Okay.
And when I have this choice, that's not enough because these are only chord tones. So what I do is I go to the next page and I have them play what they call non-chord tones. These are non-chord tones that are not a part of that spelling. Then they got to make a whole exercise with these non-chord tones, by replacing the chord tones with these non-chord tones. And then once we agree that that's an acceptable line, then we add rhythm, but using those same notes. So that they see this is how I basically construct a bass line. So all those, what they call them in Cuba, beautiful notes that they show up. Well, they're not just showing up, actually. They're just showing up for you. But I started working on them when I had these just playing notes over here. And that's how I'm starting to use this book in conjunction with the transcription so they can see how I get to where I am physically to play these choices of notes. You know, of course I'm still where it's the best note, you know, but I'm stuck with it because it's already out there. You know, my story along that line is I did a record with a very famous person. We were playing So What again. And again. And next to us came around, I'll play the G for the first note of the new chorus. And I saw this person 8 years later. He said, "Hey, Ron." I said, "Yeah, what's up, man? Yeah. Remember that chord?" I said, "Yes." How could I forget? I know what to do with that note now. Can we make a gig? Meanwhile, I'm on page 7 of this book here.
Oh, that's great.
Well, could I ask, do you encourage sort of students or young bass players to have some keyboard skills?
Absolutely. Yeah, and they must understand harmony. Then I've got to know how to resolve a seventh. I have there's a book called the Harvard Dictionary of Musical Terms.
Okay.
And that describes what a passing tone is.
Yeah.
What an appoggiatura is. What an upper and lower neighbor is. All these things are things that describe the non-chord tone as a not a harmonic note, but as a passing tone to get to a harmonic note.
Yeah.
So when I talk about these terms, I don't want to see a big question mark over here. I want to see page 12 of this book that tells you what that really is.
Sure.
You know?
Because I mean, did you study your knowledge of harmony? Did it come through you playing bass, or did you play some piano yourself? Or was
I got 2 degrees in bass, so that kind of helped that process. You know,
Sure.
I did play some piano, and I studied with Mike Longo for maybe 3 years, as a matter of fact. You know,
Sure.
just to get some skills. And of course, we were studying with the McHose method, which used the Bach chorales as our analysis for harmony. So rather than use 4, 6 flat 3, we say F with C in the bass, that kind of, F6, F7, F9, F flat 13, not F6 flat 3, flat 6, Roman numeral. So when I went to a different school, because they didn't use the same harmony that Eastman used, I had to learn, took a semester freshman theory so I could analyze the chords the way they analyzed them. But I'm still hearing the same notes.
Yeah.
So yes, I spent 4 years studying harmony and analyzing Bach chorales and ear training classes and being able to take a chorale down with the right voicing and stuff in a sitting. What he would do, he said, this is in the key of F, But it would actually be in the key of G because those got the perfect pitch. We kind of get onto it, He wanted them to hear the chord, not the note necessarily, I was good at that because I didn't care what key it was. Man, I knew where it was on the bass. I'm doing like this in my head, okay? That's what that is. Second finger over here. I got these. I'm doing that,
Because I started off on trombone was my first instrument.
Yeah.
And then I took up bass shortly afterwards. But I had classical trombone lessons and I was self-taught as a bassist, but I didn't study music academically.
Yeah.
So I felt slightly disadvantaged having the trombone and the bass. I wasn't playing a chordal instrument.
Sure.
So it took me a little bit longer to grasp the harmony side of things. I wish I'd have played some piano earlier on, but it's just the two instruments I played were.
Yeah. Well, if you get a moment, if you get a book of the Bach chorales, like 60 to 125 chorales, this is a small book of Bach chorales, and the first one's in the C major, something like that. To just kind of plod through that so you can see what the inside notes do when you get these two notes on the outside.
Yeah.
And my bass lines are based on not just this, but this too, because I want this note to make these notes do something else.
Sure.
And what this does, that controls everything else. Herbie understands that. He understands it like this. I can tell him he's lost. When he starts to trill, he's lost. I said, okay, here's a root.
Wasn't that a B.B. King song, The Trill Is Gone?
Yes, that's right.
What a nice man, by the way, B.B. King.
Yes. Anyway,
well, this is great, Ron.
Let me just add one thing. I've already got my money's worth out of Chartography. I was doing a country session about a week ago, and country producers, they want you to play roots. Well, I didn't play the root, and it actually worked out. I did something inspired by Chartography chromatically, and I was also inspired by Chartography rhythmically because I actually took this country track and put kind of a reggae bass line to it.
Good to hear.
Right, and it works. So if it becomes a hit, we all have to take Ron out. Take you to Bear Burger on West Side.
No, just give me a legal pad.
I'll get you a legal pad. So one of the things also, how many times are we in the studio when the producer says, hey man, could you do something a little bit different?
Yeah.
And then you've got to create on the spot. So you now, with this Chartography ideology, you can say, all right, let me reach into my rhythmic harmonic bag of tricks here. And
Yes. It's waiting for someone to discover how to use this, but they got to have it there to understand what their choices with someone else has laid out for them.
And you know what's funny about this? It's so damn easy to impress people with just changing one note on the bass. They think you're a genius. We shouldn't reveal that.
That's my job.
But it's so great with the coding as well, the color coding, because again, a lot of transcription books, they don't analyze anything. They'll just give a transcription and they'll just leave you.
You're on your own. Yeah. Again, the transcription is a result of a perfect storm. The piano player played just the right voicing, just the right volume. Drummer hit the right lick at the same time. The horn player wasn't being too busy, and this line survived those other guys. That's what that means. Okay, with this survival, is it your key? Can you do this all night with this kind of commentary, or is it too out of your league physically? It worked with this band because they were in the same kind of harmonic zone you were. But if you're doing this country and western date, or you're doing a 25-second jingle for an automobile, that kind of stuff, it won't work. So can you find something else? But you only have this line to work with. Well, I hope that this book shows the people who purchase this book, a simple choice can be the best choice, but you got to know what the less simple choices are.
Yeah.
And feel comfortable to use them,
Yeah.
3 against 4 is easy. You got, where are you going to do that? Yeah. Well, this band works good. This band, maybe not so good. He'll call you back tomorrow because you played F sharp in the bass of the D7 chord, though.
And Ron, I love it when you do, stop notes, say like on a D on an A string, and then you play the open D.
Yes, it's a nice sound.
I love it when you do that. It's such
Thank
a
you.
great. So
When the bass is right, you can do anything. The bass feels good that day.
Yeah.
Right now, the New York weather is changing every day, so the bass has its own mind, and certain things work on other days, and you got to figure out, well, what's next? Well, let's go to page 7.
Yeah. And Ron, could I ask you one question, slightly off topic, but do you ever miss playing on gut strings?
No,
May I ask
not
you
at
that?
all.
Oh,
No.
okay.
I don't have. They don't. For as warm as they are,
Yeah.
they don't have the note length, and most harmonics past open G, D, A, and E, they have no quality to them.
Okay.
They're just kind of a short note. I like the harmonics. It helps my line have other colors available to me.
Yeah.
If I can make a recommendation to you, Wynton Marsalis made a record called Hot House Flowers. And on that record is Lazy Afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing with the low C on the bottom and harmonics and stuff. If you get that record and listen to just that track,
Okay.
those are steel strings.
Yeah.
And the harmonics were at the right time, over the right chord, and there was if the guy would write a piccolo part up here.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's a great example of why I like steel strings.
Sure. And was it a revelation to all bass players of your generation when that change happened? Did everyone kind of go, "Oh wow, this is the way forward"? Did everyone embrace?
Well, I think we were still waiting for the steel strings to have more warmth.
Okay.
And at the time, there were not so many varieties of steel string. They were either orchestral strings, which were really stiff,
Yeah.
or the solo strings tuned up a step.
Yeah.
A, E, B, F sharp.
Yeah.
So they were less tension, and you tune them down to play G, D, A, E, so it felt a little stronger. But they didn't make the bass vibrate because they were not made for that kind of tuning.
Yeah.
And it took a while for the companies to realize that this is a market that you should invest in, and they ultimately have more steel strings you can shake a stick at, so to speak. They all have their qualities and good points and maybe not so good points, but I think one of the reasons steel gut strings didn't last long was that they started to unwrap pretty quick.
Sure.
And back in the day, the solution was to take a match and just burn it off. Well, I mean, you're in the middle of a gig and second set. You can't just stop the band and do that. And
Burning the whiskers off the string.
Yeah. All night you're doing like this because the G string is starting to go down now. So I've done that, and I've learned how to do it without looking like I'm really doing something. Something important to the bass, needless to say.
Yeah. Sure.
But I think once the string makers realize that there's a real need, not just a market, a real need for that accessibility. They always had a great arco sound, but they were all pretty stiff, and it's like playing on a telephone pole. There's just no give to the string itself. And right now, there are a lot of brands that do really great things for bass. I like my brand because I'm using it for a very long time.
Yeah.
My students at other brands, I try theirs out, and I'm comfortable with how they play it. I just like mine better.
Yeah, sure. And forgive my indulgence, one other quick thing I'd love to ask you is when you were playing back then with Miles or anyone of that period, I'm interested to know how well you could hear yourself on stage, because obviously these days we're all using acoustic bass, we're all using pickups, amplifiers, because it seems to be we've got no choice. But obviously back then, I think at best you may have had a microphone in front of you, but how well could you hear yourself? Were you hearing the PA? Were you hearing just your bass? Or?
Well, if you look at the stages that you see on YouTube, we were kind of really far apart, as close as we were.
Yeah.
For example, Tony was always to my left. He was always at least 2 feet away from me.
Okay.
And Herbie was to my right, but he was always angled from me, so that the piano lid was not strictly up like it is right now if I'm playing a duo. I'm right in the curve of the piano.
Mm-hmm.
That's a death spot for me, man. You know, I tell those guys, you got this cone like this with 88 keys with 3 strings per note, and you ask me to be equal to that with a string bass that has four strings and not much spirit, given all this weight coming at it. You know, so we were set up physically different. I think the third thing is we were kind of musically inclined. You know, we were not about outbashing the band.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the person who had a microphone would be Miles when he had the mute all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he would never play his trumpet in the mute. He would never play the trumpet without the mute into a microphone. If you look at those things, man, he's playing here with, when he won't play loud, he was over here somewhere.
Yeah.
So he helped the band keep a balance because he was not overplaying them, given the power of the trumpet. You know.
So you were hearing yourself acoustically, just
because we were far enough apart that was, and it had decent basses. And the other thing was that Herbie knew how to work the piano pedals so that the piano was just not stunningly loud all the time. You know, so there was understanding of the issue as I was. You know, and again, we were not playing like this. We had the space between the two of us. As you know, there's been this wave of mindset that has the bass player not using amp or pickup, and I'm against that as I am drunk driving. You know, I tell you that you hurt your hands. The bass doesn't sound louder. When the band gets roaring out, they won't hear your notes. I tell those guys, look, I want my grandmother, who was 95 rows back, with 2 hearing aids to hear my B flat 7 on the D string if I just play very quietly. I want that help. And until you can assure me that those guys in the band want my grandmother to hear my note like that, and not just them, you know, I can't do this gig. You know, and it's caused some concern on both coasts, you know, or in the middle, you know, you know. I want the guys. I want to affect their hearing, man. I want to affect their note choices.
yeah.
I want to affect their dynamic. And I don't mean their volume, just their dynamic.
Sure.
Like I can do with an amp, you know. And without that help, I'm just another guy. Well, I'm not the guy, man. No. I tell you, man, Miles is the band leader. I'm leading the band.
It's great.
Bravo.
And I love every one of those guys, man. Believe me, I would be the guy across the train track for him in a heartbeat. You know that picture of the guy with, you must pay the rent, that kind of guy, and here comes the train.
Yeah.
I'd be that guy for any one of those in the heartbeat, man. You
What
know?
was that? The Perils of Pauline?
Yes, yes. You must pay the rent.
Oh, that's great. Well, Ron, I can't thank you enough for this. This is great, and I think it for our very first tips from the top, which is what this is being called.
Okay.
This is a wonderful way to start. And I want to let you know, Dave Swift, I found out, is a Frankenstein devotee. Am I right?
Really?
Well, it's kind of Universal Studio monsters. I love all those black and white Universal monsters. The first thing I saw as a kid on TV was the Monsters, and then I fell in love with the movies.
Wow.
So one of my best friends now is Sarah Karloff, who's Boris Karloff's daughter.
You know, at some point on the Riverside, you hear Philly Joe made a record where he talks like Bela Lugosi on that record.
No.
You gotta find that record with Philly Joe Jones.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've decided, Tom and I, to almost like our lifeline in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's who wants to be a bass player? And the lifeline is going to be Dr. Swiftenstein.
Yes. I'll buy that one. Absolutely.
And instead of bolts coming out of his neck, we're going to have hip shot tuners.
Glad.
Yes.
I'll do it. Where do I sign?
We'll get the contract out. Again, Ron.
At the nearest blood bank.
It comes out. All right. Great talking with everybody.
Hey, man. Thank you, guys.
And we'll
Please.
see you on the 21st. You're doing Zoom, right, on the 21st, yes?
Yes.
All right, we'll be there.
And I'm around, man. If you got any other questions or time, my time is my time, and I got pretty good time. So you have my emails. Just send me a question, and I'll get to it.
Well, I love you guys. It'd be great if Ron, you could ever get to the Jules Holland show, or Dave, next time you come to America.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm available. I have a bass wheel. have some nice sound effects in case you want to do it live. This is for my students who never get it right. We all know what that means.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
This is the Bass Comedy Channel.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, signing off.
God bless.
Thank you.
Dave, thank you.
Such a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
I'm around.
All right. And it's over.